The desert sky burned with a pale yellow light as Captain Darius crossed the arena floor. His boots sank into the hot sand, each step echoing through the silent crowd of alien warriors. Thousands of green-skinned soldiers stood in rows, their muscles glistening under the sun. All eyes were fixed on the small figure kneeling in the center of the pit. She was unlike the others. Sleek black hair framed her sharp face, and her emerald skin seemed to shimmer. Her wrists were bound, but her eyes glared with such force it felt like they could cut through steel. She tilted her head up, smirking when she saw the large blade in his hand. Then, with a voice clear enough for all to hear, she mocked him. "I hope the bulge between your legs isn't the same size as your sword, human." The crowd erupted in low growls, waiting to see what he would do next. Darius did not answer right away. His grip tightened on the blade, but his mind was elsewhere. The woman's taunt wasn't the real challenge. He had been sent here for a purpose to prove humanity's dominance before this alien empire. But now, looking at her, he realized she was not just another enemy. Her defiance was calculated. She wanted this crowd to see her as unbroken. He could almost feel the tension twisting in the air like a drawn bowstring. Around them, the alien warriors began to step forward, closing in a tight circle. Darius measured their distance, knowing one wrong move could turn this arena into his grave. The woman's gaze didn't leave his face. She seemed to study him, as if searching for a condensity. Weakness. Her lips curled into another smirk, but her breathing quickened. "Go on, strike me," she said. "Show them what kind of man you are." The alien warriors snarled, their eyes glowing faintly under the light. Darius noticed their hands twitching, ready to grab weapons if he made the wrong move. He crouched slightly, pretending to adjust his grip on the blade, but really he was reading their stances. They were strong, fast, but they lacked one thing: discipline under pressure. He could use that. A gust of hot wind swept across the arena, lifting sand into the air. It clung to her skin, forming faint streaks of gold on her green surface. Darius's eyes caught a thin mark on her arm-burned scars, half-healed. She had been tortured before this moment. That meant her defiance wasn't blind courage, it was survival. He could feel the eyes of the alien commander watching from a raised platform, waiting for blood. The commander's armor shimmered with metallic blue, his face unreadable. Darius knew the game now. This was not an execution. This was a test. With a sudden movement, Darius stepped forward and lowered the blade near her neck. Gasps and growls rippled through the crowd. The woman didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on his, daring him to continue. Instead of striking, he cut through the rope binding her wrists. The crowd roared in confusion, some in anger. She stood slowly, rubbing her wrists, and for the first time her mocking smile faded into something sharper. "You've made your choice," she said softly. The alien warriors bristled, sensing a shift they did not understand. Darius turned his back to her and faced the commander. "If you want me to fight," he called out, "then give me a real challenge, not a bound prisoner." His voice carried across the arena, bouncing off the stone walls. The alien warriors exchanged glances. This was not how challenges worked in their culture. The commander's eyes narrowed, and he raised a clawed hand. The crowd fell silent instantly. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he gestured for the warriors to step back. The circle widened again, leaving Darius and the woman in the open. "Space." She stepped closer to him, her voice low so only he could hear. "You've just invited war," she warned. The commander spoke in his guttural alien tongue, his words echoing through the arena. Darius didn't understand the language, but the woman translated in a whisper. "He says you will fight together now. Against their best." Her tone was almost mocking again, but there was something else in it, something like respect. She stepped to his side, her stance shifting into a ready position. The alien warriors began to move again, but this time not as a crowd. 5 of them stepped forward, each larger than the last, their muscles like coiled steel. Darius glanced at the woman. "You ready for this?" She smiled, showing sharp white teeth. "I was born ready, human." The arena floor trembled under. The warriors approach. The 5 alien warriors moved like living statues, their steps shaking the ground. Each one had skin the same deep green as the woman, but their bodies were built for killing. Their arms were thick with muscle, veins like cords beneath the skin. The sunlight reflected off their sweat-slick forms, making them appear almost metallic. Darius held his ground, shifting his stance so the sand would not betray his balance. Beside him, the woman adjusted her footing with the ease of a fighter who had done this 100 times before. She glanced at him without turning her head, her voice barely more than a breath. "You take the 2 on the right. I'll handle." The others, Darius nodded once. He could feel the heat of the crowd's eyes on him, the silence charged with the expectation of blood. The warriors slowed as they closed in, spreading apart to encircle them. The air was heavy, thick with dust and tension. Darius had faced enemies before, but never in front of an audience that would gladly see him torn apart. The woman raised her fists, her body lowering into a stance that blended grace with raw power. Her eyes were locked on the largest of the warriors. Darius recognized the look. She had a target, and she would not stop until he was down. The first move came fast. One of the warriors lunged at Darius, swinging a jagged blade. Darius stepped inside the arc of the strike, grabbed the warrior's wrist, and drove his knee into the alien's ribs. A wet crack echoed across the arena. The warrior staggered, but another came from behind. Darius ducked under the strike, his own blade flashing in the sunlight as it slashed across the attacker's thigh. Sand sprayed into the air as the warrior collapsed to one knee. The crowd roared, some with anger, others with excitement. Darius's breath came steady. He could not let them see fear. On the other side, the woman moved like lightning. She ducked under a heavy swing, rolled across the sand, and struck upward with a kick that caught her opponent under the chin. The alien's head snapped back, and he stumbled into another fighter. She did not waste the opening. Her elbow slammed into the second warrior's ribs, the sound of impact sharp and final. 2 of her attackers fell back, struggling to recover. She glanced toward Darius with the faintest trace of a grin. In the heat of the fight, she still found time to taunt without words. One of the warriors roared and charged her, massive hands reaching to crush her skull. She waited until the last possible second, then pivoted on one foot, letting the warrior's momentum carry him forward. Her blade, stolen from the sand moments earlier, sliced deep across his back. He collapsed face first into the dust. The crowd's growl turned into a wave of shouts. They were no longer silent spectators. They wanted more. The commander leaned forward on his throne, his eyes glittering in the sunlight. Darius caught the glance. This fight was entertainment too. Him, nothing more. The largest warrior now stood between them. He was taller than both Darius and the woman by more than a head, his muscles carved like stone. In his hands was a weapon unlike the others, a long staff with blades at each end. He spun it once, the sound cutting the air. Darius stepped toward him, but the woman touched his arm. "He's mine," she said quietly. There was no challenge in her voice, only certainty. Darius stepped back and watched as she closed the distance. The warrior swung, the twin blades a blur of silver. She weaved between them, her movements as precise as a dancer's. Every strike she dodged brought her closer. Darius turned to face the last warrior on his side. The alien came at him with both hands gripping a short axe. Darius sidestepped the first swing, then drove his boot into the warrior's knee. The alien howled in pain, but swung again, forcing Darius to duck. In the opening, Darius drove his shoulder into the warrior's chest, knocking him to the ground. His blade followed, pressing against the alien's throat until the warrior raised both hands in surrender. Darius released him without a word, his eyes already tracking the woman's fight. She had closed the gap with the staff wielder, the weapons. Reach no longer mattered. She caught the shaft between her palms, twisted hard, and drove her knee into the warrior's stomach. The air rushed out of him in a harsh grunt. In one fluid motion, she wrenched the staff free and slammed the flat of the blade against the side of his head. The warrior crumpled to the sand, unconscious. The arena went still for a heartbeat, the silence broken only by the sound of both fighters breathing. Then the crowd erupted in a roar that shook the air. The commander's eyes narrowed. This was not the result he had planned. The commander rose from his throne, his towering frame casting a shadow over the arena floor. His armor shimmered with strange patterns, shifting like oil on water. The crowd quieted instantly, their roars fading to a tense hum. Darius kept his eyes locked on the alien leader, sensing that this fight was not over. The woman beside him kept her stance low, her eyes sharp. She did not trust the pause. Neither did he. The commander raised one hand, and a new gate opened at the far end of the arena. From the gate emerged a figure unlike the other warriors. He was dressed in black leather armor, his skin a darker shade of green that almost blended with the shadows. Across his back was strapped a weapon that looked older than the arena itself. The crowd's reaction was different this time. It was not excitement. It was respect, maybe even fear. Darius could feel the weight of their stares as the newcomer stepped into the sand. The woman's lips tightened. "That's no ordinary soldier," she muttered. "That's a champion." The champion walked with deliberate slowness, his gaze fixed on the two of them. When he stopped, he reached over his shoulder and drew his weapon. It was a massive sword, jagged and uneven, as if forged from a meteor. The blade seemed to hum in the air, vibrating with unseen power. Darius felt his heartbeat quicken. He had fought many enemies, but this was different. The air seemed heavier now, the sunlight dimmer. The woman tilted her head slightly toward him without breaking her stare. "If we take him down, they will never forget it." The champion did not wait for a signal. He charged, moving faster than his size should have allowed. Darius stepped to the side, trying to flank him, but the alien twisted and brought the blade around in a sweeping arc. Sand exploded where the sword struck, sending a cloud into the air. The woman darted in from the other side, her movements sharp and precise. She slashed at the champion's side, but he blocked with the flat of his blade and shoved her back. The force of the shove made her stumble a few steps, but she steadied herself quickly. Her eyes narrowed with renewed focus. Darius saw his opening. When the champion turned toward her, he lunged forward, driving his blade toward the alien's exposed side. But the champion spun at the last moment, catching Darius's strike on the edge of his jagged sword. The impact sent a shockwave through Darius's arms, making his grip falter. He gritted his teeth and forced himself to push back. The champion's strength was immense, but Darius had speed on his side. He broke away before the alien could lock him in a grapple. The crowd was beginning to shout again, sensing the shift in pace. The woman moved in once more, this time low and fast. She slid across the sand, sweeping at the champion's legs. He stumbled but did not fall. His sword came down toward her head, but Darius intercepted it with his own blade, the clash ringing through the arena like a bell. The force nearly knocked him off his feet, but he held. "Move," he barked, and she rolled to safety as the champion pulled back for another swing. Darius pressed forward, slashing in rapid strikes meant to keep the alien off balance. For the first time he saw the champion's movements slow, the woman seized the moment. She darted in behind the champion, her blade flashing in the sun. It cut a deep line across his back, and a dark green fluid spilled onto the sand. The alien roared in pain and rage, spinning wildly to strike her. but she was already gone, moving back into a defensive stance. Darius could see the wound had weakened him. The champion's stance was less sure now, his breath heavier. The crowd's cheers turned to murmurs. They could feel their champion losing ground. With a sudden surge of speed, Darius rushed in again. This time, he feinted left and came in from the right, slamming the hilt of his blade into the champion's jaw. The alien staggered, dropping to one knee. Before he could recover, the woman stepped forward, placing her blade under his throat. The arena fell silent. The champion's chest rose and fell, but he did not move to fight. Slowly, he let his weapon fall to the sand. The woman's voice was steady when she spoke to the commander. "Your champion yields." The commander did not move at first. His eyes swept over the fallen champion, then shifted to Darius and the woman. The silence in the arena was heavy, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Every alien warrior stood still, waiting for a signal. The woman kept her blade at the champion's throat, but her gaze never left the commander. Darius could feel the tension, a fragile line that could snap with the smallest wrong move. Finally, the commander raised one clawed hand, palm outward. A deep voice rumbled across the arena, speaking in the alien tongue. The woman listened closely, her eyes narrowing. She turned her head slightly toward Darius. "He says you have proven your strength," she said. "But he also says strength means nothing without loyalty." Darius frowned. He could already tell this was more than a fight. It was a test of where his allegiance lay. The commander took a step forward, his armor glinting in the sunlight, each movement deliberate. The crowd watched with silent intensity. The commander's gaze fell on the woman, and for a moment something unreadable passed between them. Her jaw tightened, but she did not lower her weapon. "He is giving me a choice," she said softly to Darius. "Strike you down now, and I will walk free. Refuse, and we both face execution." Darius studied her expression. Her words were calm, but her fingers tightened on the hilt of her blade. He knew she was weighing more than survival. This was about pride, defiance, and something else she had not yet said aloud. Slowly, she stepped back from the champion, letting her blade drop to her side. Gasps rippled through the crowd, sharp and disbelieving. The commander's eyes narrowed, his clawed fingers curling slightly. The woman lifted her chin and spoke in the alien language, her tone hard and unyielding. Darius could not understand her words, but he could hear the challenge in them. Whatever she said made the commander tilt his head, as though reassessing her entirely. The champion crawled away, clutching his wound. As guards rushed to escort him out of the arena, the commander gave a short, sharp signal. 2 guards stepped forward, each carrying a long spear tipped with black metal. They positioned themselves on either side of Darius and the woman. The crowd's hum turned into murmurs of uncertainty. Darius glanced at her, but she gave no sign of fear. Instead, she took one deliberate step toward the commander, her voice ringing out so the whole arena could hear. "If loyalty is what you want, then you will see it in battle, not in betrayal," she declared. The effect on the crowd was immediate. Shouts and chants erupted, their rhythm pounding through the air. The commander's expression did not change, but his next words were short and sharp. The woman translated in a low tone meant only for Darius. "We fight again. This time, not against a champion. Against an enemy they have kept for years." Darius frowned. "Enemy?" he asked. Her eyes flicked to the large gate on the opposite side of the arena. "You'll see," she said. The gate began to rise with a slow, grinding sound. The crowd's chants grew louder, almost frenzied now. The sunlight poured into the dark passage beyond, revealing movement in the shadows. What stepped out was unlike anything Darius had faced before. It was massive, hunched over, its body covered in thick plates of bone-like armor. Its eyes glowed a deep red, and its mouth was filled with jagged teeth, that looked more suited to tearing metal than flesh. Chains rattled at its ankles, each link as thick as Darius's wrist. The creature's growl rolled across the arena, making the sand tremble beneath their feet. The woman's grip on her blade tightened, and for the first time, Darius saw no trace of a smirk on her face. The chains fell away, and the creature moved forward with surprising speed. Darius shifted into a ready stance, his mind already calculating angles, distance, and timing. The woman moved to his side without needing to speak. They had fought together enough now to understand each other without words. The creature's shadow fell over them, blotting out the sunlight for a moment. Darius felt the sand shift under its weight. The roars of the crowd were deafening, but all he could hear was the pounding of his own heart. The beast roared and charged, its heavy steps sending ripples through the sand. Darius moved first, sprinting to the left to force its attention away from the woman. The creature's head swung toward him, and its massive jaws snapped shut with a sound like breaking stone. Sand sprayed up as it skidded to turn. The woman used the distraction to dart in from the side, her blade flashing toward the softer gap between its armored plates. Sparks flew when her strike connected, but the blade did not pierce through. The creature's tail whipped around, a bone-plated club that slammed into the ground where she had stood seconds before. She rolled clear, coming up in a crouch. "Armor's too thick," she called out. Darius shifted his stance, gripping his blade with both hands. He scanned the beast, looking for a weakness. The red glow in its eyes pulsed, and he wondered if striking the head might work. The crowd was on its feet now, their voices rising in a chaotic mix of cheers and shouts. The commander watched without expression from his throne. The beast lunged again, this time straight toward Darius. He held his ground until the last instant, then dove aside, slicing at its foreleg as it passed. The cut was shallow, but the creature roared in pain. It wheeled around with frightening speed, jaws snapping toward his face. He slammed his shoulder into its side, using his momentum to push himself clear. The woman rushed in again, this time aiming for the joint where its hind leg met its body. Her blade sank in halfway before the beast twisted, throwing her back into the sand. She rolled to her feet quickly, spitting grit from her mouth. "We need to trap it," she said. Darius's eyes scanned the arena. The chains that had bound the creature lay scattered across the sand, their weight still considerable. He sprinted toward one, dragging it behind him. The beast saw the movement and charged again, but this time the woman intercepted, striking at its snout with a powerful swing. The impact made it rear back, buying Darius the seconds he needed to loop the chain around one of its front legs. The creature bellowed, trying to shake the chain loose. Darius pulled hard, forcing the leg inward. The woman dashed in and hooked another chain around its other front leg. Together, they pulled in opposite directions. The beast roared in fury, its claws digging deep furrows into the sand. The crowd screamed louder, sensing the tide turning. The commander leaned forward slightly, watching every move with predatory interest. The woman shouted over the noise. "If we drop it, aim for the eyes," she ordered. With a final heave, the chains pulled the creature's legs together. It stumbled forward, crashing down into the sand with a thunderous impact. Dust exploded into the air, momentarily obscuring everything. Darius didn't wait for it to settle. He sprinted up the beast's armored back, gripping the ridges for leverage. The woman followed, climbing swiftly behind him. The creature thrashed, but its front legs remained bound. They reached its head just as it roared again, mouth opening wide enough to swallow a man whole. Darius drove his blade into its left eye, the steel sinking deep into the soft tissue. The beast screamed, a high, terrible sound that rattled the bones. The woman struck the right eye with equal force, her blade disappearing to the hilt. The creature convulsed violently, but the loss of sight left it swinging blindly. Darius yanked his blade free and leapt down, landing hard in the sand. The woman landed beside him, both of them breathing heavily. The crowd's roar was deafening now. The beast staggered, its massive body swaying. Without sight, it stumbled backward, its weight too great for the unsteady sand. With a final, guttural growl, it collapsed onto its side, the ground shuddering. Beneath it, silence fell for a single heartbeat. Then the arena erupted in wild cheering. Darius and the woman stood over the fallen creature, their weapons still ready. They knew better than to relax too soon. Above them, the commander rose once more, his voice booming out a new command. Asterisk. The commander's voice echoed across the arena, his tone sharper now. The woman listened carefully, her expression unreadable. He says we have earned the right to live, she translated to Darius. But he also says we now belong to him. Darius's grip on his blade tightened. He understood enough about power to know that survival under such terms was not truly freedom. The crowd cheered at the declaration, unaware or uncaring of the weight in those words. The guards stepped forward, their spears lowered in a show of control rather than open aggression. The woman glanced at Darius. If we refuse, they'll kill us here, she said quietly. If we accept, we might find a way to turn this. Darius's eyes moved from her to the commander and back again. He could see she was already thinking beyond this moment, planning for something greater. He gave a slow nod, signaling that he would follow her lead for now. She turned to the commander and spoke in the alien tongue. Her voice carried, strong and confident, cutting through the noise of the arena. The commander studied her carefully, as though weighing every syllable. When she finished, the crowd murmured, the tone shifting from wild excitement to cautious curiosity. Darius could not understand the words, but he could feel their impact. The commander's next move would decide whether they left this arena as prisoners or as something far more dangerous. After a pause, the commander descended the steps from his throne. The guards shifted uneasily as he approached, the sand crunching under his boots. He stopped only a few feet from them. His height forced Darius to look slightly upward to meet his gaze. The commander extended one hand toward the woman, palm open. She stared at it for a moment before taking it. The gesture was formal, ceremonial, and the crowd reacted with a roar of approval. The commander turned his gaze to Darius and then motioned for him to follow. The guards formed a path through the arena, leading toward a large gate on the far side. The woman walked beside Darius, her stride steady. "We're going inside the citadel," she murmured. "If my guess is right, this is where we'll see the real heart of their power." Darius adjusted his grip on his weapon, keeping it ready even as the gates closed behind them. Inside, the air was cooler, shaded from the relentless desert sun. The walls were carved from black stone, lined with banners bearing the commander's crest. Alien guards stood at attention every few meters, their eyes tracking every movement. Darius took in the layout, noting choke points, possible escape routes, and the weight of the gates they had just passed through. The woman's eyes flicked from one detail to another, her mind clearly mapping the same things he was. They were led into a massive chamber, dominated by a long table carved from a single slab of pale crystal. Around it sat a dozen alien leaders, each wearing armor more ornate than the last. The commander gestured for Darius and the woman to step forward. The leaders' eyes followed them closely, some with open curiosity, others with visible disdain. The woman stepped forward first, speaking in a measured tone that commanded attention. Darius stood at her side, silent but unyielding. The leaders conferred among themselves in their own language, their voices low but intense. The commander raised a hand, silencing them. He spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of final authority. The woman listened, then turned to Darius. "He's offering us positions in his war council," she said. "But it's not an invitation. It's a leash. If we accept, we fight his wars. If we decline, we don't walk out of here. Darius studied the faces around the table. Every eye was on them, waiting for their choice. Darius felt the weight of every gaze in the chamber. The air was thick with expectation, the kind that pressed down like a physical force. The woman stood still beside him, her posture controlled, her eyes locked on the commander. Accepting the offer would bind them to this alien power. Refusing it could end them in an instant. The tension in the room had the same sharp edge as a drawn blade. She was the first to move. Slowly she stepped toward the table, her boots clicking against the polished crystal floor. Her hand brushed the surface lightly before she spoke in the alien tongue. The words rolled out steady, measured, and deliberate. The leaders shifted in their seats, some leaning forward, others narrowing their eyes. Whatever she was saying, it was having an effect. When she finished, the chamber was silent, as though the walls themselves were listening. The commander's expression remained unreadable, but there was a slight tilt to his head, a sign that he was intrigued. He responded in a deep, even tone, his voice filling the chamber without effort. The woman listened, her chin lifting slightly at certain phrases. Then she turned to Darius. "He wants proof," she said. "Not just that we can fight, but that we can lead." Her eyes flipped briefly toward the other leaders. "They will not accept us unless we show them something they have never seen." Darius kept his voice low. "And if we fail?" She didn't hesitate. "Then they will use us as an example to keep others in line." He could tell she believed it completely. Her hand rested near the hilt of her blade, a quiet signal that she was ready for anything. The commander gave another order, and a pair of guards stepped forward. One of them held a small, intricate device, shaped like a sphere with glowing lines that shifted and pulsed. The device was placed on the table between them. The woman leaned in to study it. "It's a war map," she said. "Real-time tracking of forces across their territories." The sphere rotated slowly, revealing countless shifting lights. Red markers were clustered along certain borders, and Darius could see how they moved in response to others. The commander gestured toward the largest cluster and spoke again. The woman translated. "They want us to break an enemy line here within the hour." Darius stared at the map, his mind already calculating possibilities. "Do they expect us to go alone?" he asked. She shook her head. "They will give us troops, but only those they consider expendable." He knew what that meant, untrained, undisciplined, and likely desperate to survive. It was a test within. A test. If they succeeded, they would command respect. If they failed, the blame would be entirely theirs. He studied the map again, committing every key point to memory. The commander motioned, and the guards led them from the chamber. The corridors of the citadel were tall and narrow, the black stone walls echoing every footstep. Outside, the heat of the sun hit them instantly. A formation of alien soldiers waited, their armor mismatched, their weapons old. Darius recognized the look in their eyes. They were not volunteers. The woman stepped to the front, scanning the group with quick assessing glances. Then she turned to him. "We'll have to earn their trust fast." Darius moved among the soldiers, speaking to them through the woman's translations. He kept his tone calm but firm, making it clear that he expected them to survive, not just to fight. A few of them nodded, their grips tightening on their weapons. The woman spoke next, her voice sharper, cutting through any doubt. She pointed toward the distant horizon where the enemy's position waited. The soldiers' eyes followed, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to something closer to determination. Asterisk. The alien soldiers marched in an uneven line, their armor clinking softly under the hot sun. Darius walked at the center, the woman slightly ahead of him, both scanning the terrain. The horizon shimmered with heat, but beyond it, jagged ridges marked the enemy's position. The war map in Darius's mind placed their forces there, entrenched and expecting resistance. The soldiers behind them moved with hesitation. Still uncertain if this mission was survival or a death march, the woman slowed her pace to walk beside Darius. "We hit them hard and fast," she said. "If we give them time, they'll crush." "U.S." Darius nodded, his eyes sweeping over the ground. Shallow dips and ridges would give them cover. He pointed to one of the dips. "We split the force," he said. "Half come with me to flank from the west. You take the rest straight at them. They'll focus on you, and I'll hit their side." She considered it for a moment, then agreed. They halted the soldiers and split them quickly, giving each group simple, direct orders. The woman's voice carried with authority, even through translation. She reminded them of the beast in the arena, of the moment they had stood together and won. Faces began to change, doubt hardening into resolve. When she was done, she stepped back to Darius and gave a sharp nod. "They're ready," she said. "Now we move." The march to the ridge was swift. Darius's group moved low and fast, using every scrap of cover. He could hear the faint clink of armor from the woman's group moving along the open ground. The enemy's position came into view, a line of spiked barricades and dug-in fighters with weapons raised. A signal cry rang out from the woman's group, and the enemy immediately turned their attention toward her. Darius gripped his blade tighter and led his group into position. They charged from the ridge with a roar that caught the enemy off guard. The first line of fighters fell quickly under the sudden assault. Darius drove forward, cutting down one after another, his soldiers following close behind. The enemy tried to regroup, but their focus was still split by the woman's relentless attack from the front. Her voice rose above the chaos, calling her soldiers to push harder. The clash of steel and the cries of battle filled the air. The tide began to turn when the enemy's commander appeared. He was taller than the others, wearing blackened armor marked with red symbols. His weapon was a heavy axe that cleaved through shields and armor alike. Darius moved to intercept, knowing that if the commander fell, the rest might break. Their blades met with a shock that rattled Darius's arms. He ducked under the next swing and countered with a slash to the side, forcing the commander back a step. The woman broke through the enemy's front line just as Darius pressed his attack. She caught sight of the commander and angled toward him, cutting down anyone in her path. The enemy saw her coming and panicked, breaking formation in their attempt to stop her. This opened gaps that her soldiers exploited immediately. Darius locked blades with the commander again, holding him in place as she closed the final distance. Together, they struck, one blade piercing the chest while the other cut deep into the neck. The commander fell, and the enemy's formation collapsed. Those who did not flee dropped their weapons in surrender. The ridge was theirs, the battlefield littered with weapons and armor. The woman stood at Darius's side, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. The alien soldiers who had once doubted them now stood in a loose circle, looking at the two of them with something close to respect. The woman met Darius's gaze and gave the faintest smile. When they returned to the citadel, the commander was waiting in the throne room. He rose as they entered, the hall filled with alien leaders who had doubted them before. The woman stepped forward, holding the captured enemy banner high for all to see. The chamber erupted in shouts, some in anger, others in praise. The commander raised his hand, silencing them all, then spoke in a slow, measured tone. "The woman," translated for Darius, her voice steady. "He says we have proven more than strength. We have proven we can command. From this day, we are not his prisoners. We are his equals."